Somebody invited me to a convention earlier this year in July, and I said, no. I'll come in the fall, winter, and really early spring. I will not be here in the summer.
Nope.
And I have enough of that in Texas, and that's what I try to get out of town mostly, is the Texas summers.
Summer in Texas is supposed to dry heat, though, not the humidity.
Oh, to you it is. The humidity gets up to like 60 to 80% in Texas. But yes, to Florida, that's whatever. That's a pleasant summer.
I lived in Texas for a while.
I went to Portland for a convention once, and it was 82 degrees. The humidity was about 20%, you know, and so beautiful, right? And everybody's going, oh my God, it's so hot today. And I was like, I love it. It could be this every day of the year.
West Coast folks are different.
What?
The West Coast folks are different.
Yeah, but the East Coast girls are hip. I really dig those styles they wear. And the Northern girls are with the way they talk. They knock me out when I'm down there.
How can you be down there if you're in the north?
I know, I messed up the lyrics. It's the Southern girls with the way they talk.
Northern girls the way they kiss.
That's right. They keep the boyfriends warm at night. Ching, 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 ching.
Oh, yeah.
They all could be California. Wish they all could be California.
Oh, God.
So how many people do we have now? 5. Nobody comes to a comic book panel at an anime convention. You guys should be commended for your exquisite taste and intelligence, and of course good looks. This is the most attractive thing I've ever seen at any convention. This room is just filled with beautiful faces. I have at least one kind. So if you guys want to, we could just take this to the bar. I like doing that with the panels. You guys want to do that? You know, hang out. Is everybody old enough to? Is anybody? Okay. Oh, that'd be kind of cool. Well, we need to wait though. We need to give people a few minutes. It is just 4 o'clock now. Like here comes Maze Hughes and his daughter Alicia. Hey, what's going on?
Ask her name.
What's your name, baby? Well, I'm Maze Hughes.
What's your full name?
My name is Elisa John Sanders.
And that's your real name?
Wow, come over here.
Go on up, say hi. It's okay, go on, piece of cake.
Hi, how are you?
Her
I'm
name
Sonny.
is actually Alicia, like Alicia Hughes.
Can I get a
Here,
picture?
bring Daddy a candy.
I have full hands.
Okay,
Well,
here, I
I'll
will
take a
take your
picture.
candy. Smile, smile big. Give him a big hug.
Oh,
Let's take a look
Stay
at it.
on.
say cheese.
Yeah, look at
Who is the word?
that.
It's so
Good,
cute.
great.
Come on, princess.
Come, me.
Okay.
Ow. Ow.
I don't know if Alicia will be able to get in the bar though. We were talking about the panel only has like 20 people or so. We should go to the bar.
I could be for that.
Take a nice bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, because all I have to do after that is a signing for an hour or so. I can do that drunk.
Oh, best signatures.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
you can't resell this now. No one's gonna say it's me.
Yeah.
Time is normally right?
What?
Time is signing.
6 o'clock.
In the dealer's room.
That's the weirdest Christmas I've seen. It's Arabian.
Is it, do I have a permanent table in a dealer's room so I can just go there anytime?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What is the deal on the signing? Do you know what it is? Is it priced or is it?
I have the prices on the one sheet.
I gave her the one sheet.
Oh.
Did you guys ever watch One Sheet? It's now back on Cartoon Network.
I thought that was the one ring that they made extra.
Oh, that's right. The one price to rule them all.
The one price.
Okay, the first item is free though. So if you bring your, I'll sign one thing for free, and then merchandise autograph is 20. The only merch I have is prints.
Yeah.
If you want a photo, it's 10. That's really too high. If you want, what is a pop auto?
Little pop figures.
Those pop figures.
They're $25. If you want me to sign that, it's $25. That's not a good deal at all.
Shut up, Sonny.
No, actually, it is a good deal because I think those signage are going for over $100 online. So, if you guys want to invest your money, go get a pop, give me $25, and then sell it online immediately. I'll put on there like.
What I do for a living.
Oh, really?
I sell high-end collectibles.
Well, then what I'll do is on mine, I'll like sign it. I'll sign starting bid on eBay like 150, so you get at least that much out of it.
I only had you down with 3 different prices on here: 20 for an autograph, 10 for a photo, and 10 for a video autograph.
There it is, Pop Auto.
Sneaking stuff.
Black and white. You have a bunch of Pop Autos. Why do they call it Pop Auto?
I think it's
automatically
autograph.
pop
Pop with an
figure
autograph.
Yes, it is.
It's
I
Pop
had to
and
shorten it.
Pop and an autograph. Well, I'm not selling pops. They have to bring their own pops.
Big enough for everybody to share?
You are so proud of this sheet.
I am proud of
And
this
yet
sheet.
this is there's a little problem here.
Soiled
We have an issue. Well, guys, my name is Sonny Strait, primarily known as a voice actor, although I'm starting to be known more as a comic book artist. Recently doing the artwork on the new ElfQuest series for Dark Horse. I started out in high school doing theater as a freshman in high school. I got interested in it, and also I started doing artwork for the school newspaper. I was the staff cartoonist. And so I've always had this interest in both comics and acting. And then in college, I was a theater major, and I was actually like a kind of a theater jock. I was there on a full tuition scholarship. They were paying for even my books and my room and board. I think I got 2 meals a day. It was amazing. All I had to do was keep a C average. I was just a total jock.
Wow.
And then I got a short story published. So I met a guy named Billy Foster who was making his own comic books, and they were called The Sex Gophers from Hell. And The Sex Gophers was about a band they called The Sex Gophers. And I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. It was drawn like crap, but I thought it was really funny. So I drew a picture of his characters, and I said, hey, just giving you some fan art. And he said, well, let's make this the cover, and why don't you draw the next issue? And I had never drawn a comic before. I'd only just drawn comic strips. So I drew it, and I just fell in love with the medium like right away. And I noticed like every 10 pages, I was light years ahead of the last 10 pages. And if you want to learn how to draw a comic book, because comics require so much from you. Like okay, let's say I'm doing a story about doing a panel here, right? Okay, so first panel 1, I've got to figure out how to establish the shot. I have to tell the environment, where's the environment that I'm in? So I could do it like from my point of view. I could like draw a picture of all of you, right? But then if I'm going to decide that's the panel, I've got a lot of perspective issues. Like, how do I draw all these chairs in perspective? How do I draw these people sitting in perspective, you know? And what's the background? Or I could do reverse. It could be from your point of view looking at me talking to you. This is just panel 1, right? And most comic book pages have about, on average, 5 panels per page. Even manga, which tends to have less, there's still about 5. Is that Meredith?
That is Meredith.
Oh, we have to take a break. Hang on just a second. Come here.
I haven't seen this girl in years. This is my wife, Android 18.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
How you been?
Good.
I'm glad you're back doing this.
How do you think? I'm not.
Okay.
So like, okay, and then the middle of the panel, she walks up and then I have to go and talk to her. So then we have to figure out how to make that movement from here to here to here. So would it maybe 3 panels? Maybe I stand up, then you have a shot of me walking towards her, and then we embrace. That's a sequence panel. Like, but anyway, what I'm saying is there's a lot of challenges. Every comic book, a 20-page comic book, tends to have like 100 drawings in it, or more, but at least 100. You draw a 20-page comic book, you're going to be a better artist at the end. But anyway, so we did several short stories together, and we finally got one published, and I just dropped out of college. I said, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on, was comics. And I focused on that for like 10 years, and I had some minor successes. Several little publishers were publishing me for stuff, and I also worked as a portrait artist to pay the bills. And then, Funimation moved to Texas, and by that time I had started getting the acting bug again. I had done a lot of theater in Dallas and Fort Worth, and they had auditions for Dragon Ball Z. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get a part because I've never done a cartoon before, but I think it would be fun to audition. And I landed the role of Krillin. And you know, Krillin dies a lot, so it was definitely a part-time job. But it was so fun, I didn't think it was going to be a career, right? And then Cartoon Network said they really liked the way I read Krillin and asked me to audition for Toonami Tom. And then I got Toonami Tom, and I said, you know what, I think I've stumbled onto a career here, so that became my major focus. And I'd kind of given up on comics because comics tend to be run by idiots and or evil people. I had a book that I produced myself. I had a small publisher publishing it, and I got 5,000 orders for it. Now, 5,000 orders for me at that time, I would have made $1,200, and I could have lived off that. And I was like, yes, I can finally live off comics, right? And we were too late getting it printed, so the distributors canceled their orders. And I was like, I can't win. And so I just quit. I just said, okay, I'm just gonna go into acting. But then, I had been to Comic-Con. You guys ever been to Comic-Con? Oh, it's amazing. You gotta go to the Mecca, at least once. It's the
pilgrimage.
It is a pilgrimage. You must go there at least once, and you'll see like your nerd light just glow even more when you're there. But while I was there, I had been there before as a comic book artist, and back then, they had a prejudice against black and white comics, because this was before manga was really popular. So they would come by your table and they would flip your comic book open just enough to see if it's black and white, or just like the corner, see if it's black and white or color, and they go, ew, it's black and white, I didn't read black and white. And they would just leave, and you're like, oh God. So here I am years later, doing a signing with Chris Sabat, Stephanie Nadolny, and Sean Schimmel, and we were having lunch and we're running late. This is our first really big signing ever, and they sent us to Comic-Con, and we rush over to the Funimation table, and they tell us to sit at this table and start signing because there's a huge line. And so we're just sitting there going, okay, just signing right away, just amazed at this experience, right? And what I had not known was that while we were gone, the Funimation guy, his table was just filled with merchandise and there was no place for us to sign. He had provided no space for us. So he asked the people next to them in another booth, said, do you mind if the Funimation actors sign in your booth? Well, the people running that booth were the people who do ElfQuest. And the husband, who pays the bills, and I know how expensive those tables are, he said, no, this is our space. But the wife, Wendy Pini, who created the series ElfQuest, said, wait, who wants to do a signing here? He said, the Dragon Ball Z actors. Well, she's a Dragon Ball Z fan. And she went, yes, they could sign here. We had no idea this was going on. So I come over to the table with everyone else, and we're signing, and I keep hearing the name Wendy Pini. Now, I've been a fan of Wendy Pini since I was in high school. I read ElfQuest. The first time I'd ever seen ElfQuest, I was at my friend Richard's house, may he rest his soul, but his floor was just carpeted with comic books. And he was in the restroom or something, and I was looking for something to read, and I just grabbed this book, ElfQuest, and flipped to a random page. And there was a scene of the main character, Cutter, with his sword against this evil sorceress, and they're just battling it out. You know someone's going to die from this, right? You could tell this is real stakes. And back then, comic books, this is before Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns. They weren't that serious. There were no real hype. Basically, it was just, we're gonna punch up some guys, and then it's gonna be the end of the book. So this was pretty amazing to me to see a comic book that had real stakes in it. So I'm like, man, whoever drew this dude's a badass. And I look at the name of this badass dude, and his name was Wendy. And I'm like, what? This is a woman drew this? Which is, a very sexist thing to think. But there it was. And I was just amazed. And so then I became a fast fan, and I just wanted anything to do with ElfQuest. So here I am years later at this convention, and I keep hearing people say, Wendy Pini, Wendy Pini. And I'm like, why do you keep saying her name? He says, she's behind you, dude. And I turned and looked over my shoulder, and she was looking at me, and she went, hello. And I went, oh my God, it's Wendy Pini. And I just started freaking out. And I said, I'm just a big fan of yours. I've been reading since high school. Oh my God. And she goes, well, I'm a big fan of yours. And I went, shut up. And she goes, no, really, I am. And I said, you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z? And she goes, yeah, me and my dog Chewie. we take a break at 4:30 and we go downstairs and watch Dragon Ball Z. And I went, what? So then I found out the whole story, what had happened before we were there. So I went to my room and I drew a picture of her main character, Cutter, with Goku, Krillin, and Gohan. And I asked the other actors to sign, I'm giving empty voice balloons, to say, just give them a special thanks because this space is very expensive and they were nice enough to give it to us. And so they did. And I gave it to her and she looked at it and she goes, you drew this? And I said, yeah, I've actually been published a few times. She goes, really? Would you like to draw for me? And that's when I felt the floor vanish and I was just sort of suspended in midair, and then I went off to another dimension. For about 1,000 years, I came back Sonny the White, and then when I came to, I said, is that a trick question? And she goes, no, I would love to. Your Cutter is more on model than any artist we've ever had. And I went, well, yeah, let's do it. But I came home and I was thinking about it, and I had always felt that my artwork had hit a ceiling, you know? Is that me? No. I had always wanted to study under a master. So I said, hey, I called her up and I said, I'm very excited to draw this book, but I want to change the terms. And she said, do you want more money? And I went, no. I want to be your apprentice. I want to study under you while I draw this book. And she goes, all right, move to California. And I was like, I can't move to California. I'm a voice actor here in Texas. I've got to be here in Texas to record. And she goes, no, just fly back when you have to record. Just tell them, get your stuff together, and then, once a month, do your recording. And I went, is that even possible? So I told Funimation that's what I'm going to do. And apparently, I found out later that they didn't believe I'd come back. And so they had another guy waiting to play Krillin if I didn't come back. But I did. I came back every month, and since then, a lot of voice actors do that. Meredith here, she records from, where's your state?
Georgia.
In Georgia, she records in Georgia. So, yeah. Huh?
Or I fly back to Dallas.
Oh, that's true. They'll fly her in, too. They didn't fly me in. I had to pay my own way.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago before Funimation had the bucks it has now. Yeah. So it's always been dominating my life. Comics and anime has been taking up like a good chunk of my existence. But this is I want to do this like a Q&A thing. I don't know how many people want to be cartoonists. Anyone? No? You just came to this panel? Okay. Well then, I will run the gambit on your questions onto anything that I've done. I've been a director at Funimation, of course an actor. I've also been a writer and also a comic book artist writer. I've been published by Tokyo Pop before they folded. I don't think I was the cause of it, but I was right there at the end. So if you guys have any questions that run the gamut of any of those things, he's not raising his hand, he's just putting his arm around his wife, so don't get alarmed. But she does have a question. We'll start by asking them. What's your question?
Yes, when you get the script for the comic book, what does it look like? Is it more like a movie script, or does it work with panels?
It depends on who the writer is.
Which is the easiest one to draw for?
Depends on the writer. Different writers do different things. Like Wendy, when we've worked together a lot, and when we first started drawing together, she drew layouts, like rough layouts, for the first. I did 2 58-page stories for her back in 2001, and she would do rough layouts, and then I would redraw them and make them type pencils and then ink them, and it was black and white then. And then the second story, she just said, you just do all the layouts, right? Well, years later, about 6 years ago, she asked me if I would color ElfQuest for Dark Horse. And I never colored a comic book series before, but I did a lot of paintings in Photoshop. And Dark Horse said, who do you want your colors to be? And she said, Sonny Strait. And they said, who's Sonny Strait? She said, the voice of Krillin. And they went, what? Krillin wants to color our books? Says, yeah, he actually worked for me before, and she showed him some of my stuff I'd done on DeviantArt. And so they said, yeah, bring Krillin in. So Krillin was coloring for 5 years. And then she said she was done with ElfQuest, and then she asked me last year if I'd be interested in drawing the next series for Dark Horse. And I'm like, what? Now this time it wasn't like, is that a trick question I'm honored to? It was like, that's really scary. You want me to draw for Dark Horse Comics? That's a huge company. A company that I've been following and been in love with since I was in my 20s, you know. And I said, yeah, but let me do a couple of sample pages to see if you like what I can do. And so I drew a couple of sample pages, and Richard, Wendy's husband, and also manager, producer, I mean, he makes everything happen. He said, can you give me 2 more of those? We can make this an official pitch. And I said, sure. So I drew 2 more pages. They took it to Dark Horse, and Dark Horse looked at it and went, Wendy, when did you draw these? And she goes, I didn't, that was Sonny. She says, what, Krillin drew these? And I said, yeah, let's go with this project. So we started drawing it, and Wendy was giving me very tight scripts, you know, just like you would expect, like a movie script, as you were asking. That's a long way to get to this answer, but this is what happened. So I've got this script, and she really liked what I was doing with the pages, but she didn't like the way I was drawing one particular character. It was a little kid, and to me, little kids all look like Gohan with big heads. And she wanted it to be more realistic, and so she drew some quick drawings, you know, of this character, and I said, I know you said you're done drawing, but I'm gonna keep bugging you about this until you say yes. I would really like it if you could do the layouts, just so I can get an idea of what you're seeing, you know, for this. And she goes, really? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh my God, that's so great, because I do the layouts anyway. I went, what? Because that's how I write. I draw the layouts, and then I write the script on the layouts. And I went, are you holding these back? Just give them to me. That way I don't have to second guess what you're envisioning, you know? So in Wendy's case, it depends on what she's writing for too, but she will draw out layouts, then write a script for the layout, and then hand me both. And so, and then and it's various degrees of, because I said, I want you to do this as long as you're happy. Because I know that toward the end it was getting to be a grind for her to do 40 years of ElfQuest. And I said, I don't want to work on a project you're not happy working on. So just give me as much as you want to give me. And so some pages, she almost gives me tight pencils, especially on characters sometimes. And then sometimes it's just stick figures. And I said, well, what my job will be is whatever you give me, I will turn it into ElfQuest. And she said, okay. So that's the way I work with Wendy. And I've worked with my partner, Billy. He did the same thing, though. He did rough layouts, but he couldn't draw that well, but he could draw well enough that I could see what he had in mind. So with his, I would look at his layouts as a guide or inspiration to my own layouts. With Wendy's, she's been doing this forever. I mean, like I look at her, even her stick figures are laid out compositionally so well that I just use that. I'll just draw on top of it, right? So it's different. I mean, it's a creative field. It's a much more creative field than anything I've ever worked in, even anime, which is very creative in itself. But when you're doing comics, it's such a creative endeavor that you come up with creative ways to produce it. And I don't think there's any 2 people that work the same way. You know, like I know that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, who created most of the characters from Marvel, the way they would work basically is that Stan would say, hey, here's an idea, give him a paragraph of a story idea, and then Jack would just draw out the whole thing, just let his imagination take it where it wants to, and he would write in the corner little notes about what he thinks they're saying, and then Stan Lee would go in and make it hip, you know. So that's, to answer your question, that's a very long answer to that question, but that's basically how we do it, yeah. But some people are very tight. Like their scripts are very tight. They don't want any margin for error. They don't want you to add anything, you know. Generally with Wendy's, if I'll add stuff all the time, you know. If she doesn't like it, she'll tell me. If she does, you know, it stays in. Generally, she doesn't say anything. Yeah.
So, being in both comics and voice acting, do you ever tend to, especially when you see, I know you may not do a lot of the writing yourself, being an artist, which
well, I wrote 2 graphic novels for Tokyo Pop.
Yeah, so with that, looking at a panel, do you ever take what the lines should be and say them to yourself, maybe in a mirror, to understand how should you animate that facial expression for the comic?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I work with a mirror a lot, you know, to see what my facial... You should act out everything that you're drawing ahead of time. And as an actor, I definitely come at it that way. Otherwise, a lot of people who are cartoonists, they'll tell you they're all frustrated actors. I'm probably the only actor who's a frustrated cartoonist. Because I'm a very natural actor. It comes to me easily, but drawing is very hard for me. I struggle with it all the time, and that's why I like it, I think, because it really challenges me. And when I'm not drawing a page, I'm filling up sketchbooks. I've been lately filling up a sketchbook every 2 days. Yeah. Wendy says I have graphomania.
So,
Yeah.
I know you've been drawing comics a long time, and I'm not very familiar with the process and stuff, but as technology has changed, like a lot of stuff's gone digital and animation, like how has that changed how you do comics? Where probably back in the 80s, like things were probably more freehand, but now you can probably, I don't know if you can automate a lot of stuff on a computer now.
It's changed a lot, yeah, over the years. And I'm such a comic book purist. If I had my way, I would just be doing just ink on paper, you know, in the classic way. And I remember, I'm really good at Photoshop. But I didn't want to do Photoshop. When I was Wendy's apprentice, she made me learn how to do it. And then I was like, oh, there's a lot of advantages here. You can do a lot with this. And you can certainly make the color look so much better than it could in the old days, right? But I also resisted drawing on a computer. Like, I was just, I could tell for years. It was like, what I draw with pen and ink and brush is nowhere near the quality of what I did on a tablet or something, right? But then I kept practicing with it, and they're also Manga Studio. What's the new program they have? It's the same thing though. Manga Studio. You guys know what Manga Studio is?
Yeah, I don't remember what that.
It's a great program though. It has several different nib sizes and stuff. And I got a Cintiq, and a Cintiq has enough tooth on the screen so it feels like you're drawing on paper. And so I started practicing with that, and eventually I saw a drawing, and I looked at it, and I couldn't remember if I did it by digital inking or by hand inking, and I went, well, if I can't tell the difference, then it doesn't matter, does it? So yeah, that's changed a lot. I use a lot of digital drawing and stuff like that. Also considerations for like webcomics and stuff. Like Wendy did a series called Mask of the Red Death? Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe adaptation. But what she did, she drew it to be printed as well as to be a motion comic. And so she had designed it that way from the very beginning. So when you saw it online as a motion comic, and then she gathered up as a print volume afterwards. I don't do it that way. I'd still rather just draw pen and ink comics, you know. I'm still at heart a purist. I try to make it at least look like the black and white books that I used to look at. But Wendy, I mean, she'll have me do like full paintings sometimes on these panels in Photoshop. It's just whatever she wants. Although we were talking about the next series we want to do after this one, and she said, well, you're going to have to write it and draw it yourself. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine with that, but if I do it that way, it's probably going to be much more heavier black and white, you know, with just color complementing the black and white drawings. Because that's where I really grew up loving, you know, and that's what I was attracted to ElfQuest for. Yeah?
So I have a similar struggle that I'm much better on paper than I am digitally, and transferring over and trying to learn that has been a struggle. What helped you the most to make that transition?
The main thing that helped me was using a Cintiq, because it's a really high quality. But what's the one the Apple one?
Procreate.
Yeah, well that's an app, but the actual iPad.
iPad Pro.
I've got an iPad Pro, and it's okay. It works pretty good, but the Cintiq it has a certain texture with the pen to the tablet itself that it really feels like you're using paper. And if you ever get a chance to try one out, you should. They're very expensive though. Yeah, that's the problem. They're very expensive. And you really don't, and also what changed for me is I was using the ones like the bamboo type that you draw here and you're looking at the screen like that. And I could do some good work with it, but it's not the same as drawing at what you're looking at. Yeah, that makes a big difference.
I think that's been my biggest struggle with it. I have an Intuos, and so it's the same thing. I'm like, I can't make the connection between looking at this and being down here drawing.
But you know what? Some of the best artists today,
Oh, I'm real bad at pens.
some of the best artists today though still use pen and ink. Like we were just talking about Jim Lee, you know, one of the best artists in comics today, and still pencil, pen and ink, you know. Nothing wrong with that. Plus, you have something to sell later at conventions, you know, when you have original art. You guys not bored with this conversation yet? None of you are artists, and you're like, okay, that's good. All right. We're just going to the nuts and bolts. Yeah, what's your question?
What are some of your favorite comics besides ElfQuest?
Oh, I love Hellboy. another dark horse book, actually. You? What do you like? What do I read now? What's my latest thing? I try to keep up with Marvel and DC, you know, and what they're going on. I'm never really interested in anything they do, but I feel like I should be up to date with what's going on so I get the conversation in the comic book stores. Although occasionally they'll surprise me. Like the Flash Forward series seems to be pretty good. It's a new one that just came out, started last month. Story-wise, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I'm attracted to the artwork, but if the story's not there, I won't get 2 pages into it.
You read any image books?
I have, yeah. Like what? I read Spawn when it first came out. I mean, Max and the old school and stuff. And I was reading Savage Dragon for a while, but man, that turned into a porn. It's crazy. But yeah, I usually look through it, flip through it, see if the artwork is interesting, and then if the story can carry me, I'll read it. If I don't, I'll just throw it away. Yeah. Actually, there's a new store in town that will take my old comics. They only give me credit, you know, but whatever. Any other questions? What do you read, by the way? Mm-hmm.
I really like Saga.
Saga's good, yeah. That's a good series. Yeah.
So, as a comic book artist, and I know this is very personal, what things in other comics, especially from the art, are like your ticks,
What really gets me excited about the work?
excited, as well as the answers to what makes you look at that and go, nope, 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 not looking at that, even if it's safely for the art.
And sometimes, like, a colorist can save artwork, you know? And so, like, you can see, like, that, and I don't mind that, if it's enough there to keep my interest. But when there's a weak colorist and a weak penciler and weak inker, then you've got nothing, right? And you've got to have some kind of weight to hold your eye to the page. Also, I look at composition, if the composition is there. But, you know, even then, that doesn't really matter. It's really hard to define comics. Like, Yonan Vasquez did a lot of comic book work, and also, this guy did Lenore? Roman Dirge, right. And I would not say that those guys are very strong in composition at all. As a matter of fact,
they should not.
They don't, their inking style is very sloppy.
I like it.
You know, and yet I love it. I love everything about it. So sometimes you can just charm your way into people's hearts through art. A lot of times it depends on who you are, you know, and what you're presenting to the world. It can be stick figures. There was a comic called Stick Figure Man that came out of Canada that was really fun and charming, and it was just stick figures, but it was just, you could tell that the guy who was drawing this was having a great time, and so you had a great time reading it. Yeah, really, you can also tell when somebody does incredible work, but it's belabored, and you could tell they did not enjoy drawing it, and you just don't enjoy looking at it, you know, so I like that about that. To me, it makes it a higher art form in the fact that it's really hard to define it, you know, what makes it good. Yeah.
Yeah, so where's for the weirdest fan experience?
Where the weirdest what?
Fan experience.
My weirdest fan experience?
Yeah.
It's probably here in Florida.
It was Brian and John.
Well, no, I was at, was it?
Was it AFO or was it?
AFO, yeah, it was AFO. And I was out walking by the swimming pool after hours, and this lovely young lady in the swimming pool.
No.
Yes.
Not the pool.
Yeah.
Not the AFO pool.
Wait.
Yeah. She said, "You're the voice of Maze Hughes, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she flashed me.
Whoa!
And I was like, I said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. And she did it again. And there was a dude in the water next to her, a friend of hers, and he was just going like this. I said, "You've never seen this side of your friend before, have you?" And he goes, and I said, "Son, you owe me." That was the weirdest experience I've ever had at a con.
Oh, God.
It was pretty weird. It's kind of awesome, but it was also weird.
Boobies!
Boo-boo. Any other questions about movies or anything?
No.
Anything? Yeah.
No more.
You mentioned directing before. Does it take too much from taking a script to a director versus taking a script to an artist? Because you're still interpreting the script.
Yeah, it's kind of the same though, because the director has a lot of play, you know, and he can do what he wants to do with that script and how he wants to approach it, you know. And a lot of times, I mean, when I direct it, I always tell people, if you can say this another way, but you think it would be funnier, but it means the same thing, or it's more poignant, but means the same thing, feel free. Especially if I have actors I've worked with for a long time and I trust them, and I go, you know, I don't mind people improvising in the booth as long as we don't take away from the original intent of the story. So yeah, there is a lot of that. When I direct, I rely really heavily on my actors. I make them work, because I want them to be giving as much as I am. You know, I can't stand being directed by people who tell me how to say every line. You know, it's like, why did you cast me if you're going to tell me how to say every line? So I respect my actors' abilities and their talents, and I just say, you know, let me see what you can give me. I'll tell them the situation, and this actually was started because Chris Sabat gave me advice when I first started directing years ago. He said, listen to what your actors are giving you. If it may not be what's in your head, but if it works just as well, go with the actor. And I realize there's several reasons for this. One, as actors, we have very huge egos, right? And they're very fragile. And so if we get too much criticism, we will feel defeated and we will not give you anything. But also, if you're encouraging and you let them be creative, they get more creative and they start giving you more and more. So yeah, and also what's in your head tends to be a cliche. You know, if you read a script, you get a cliche read in your head right away. What you've probably heard people say this same sentence a million times in Hollywood. Whereas if you've got a guy who's in the moment, who's acting this in the moment, living that experience, he's going to give you a read that matches that moment, if he's any good. He's going to live that moment and give it to you. So there is a lot of leeway in how people direct as well. Now when you write, there's a lot of leeway in that, because you're basically taking a rough translation of Japanese and making it fit mouth flaps and still mean the same thing. It's like writing poetry to a meter, except the meter changes every line. It's like the hardest poem anyone's ever tried to write, and we do it all the time. Yes?
Yeah, so if you can go back in time to your younger self,
yeah,
why you say to your younger self?
What would I say to my younger self?
Yeah.
This works out. Don't worry, it works out.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll take a long time, but it'll work out. Yeah.
If someone were to want to apprentice under you, what qualities would you look for in their work?
Yes, honey.
Do you want to be my apprentice?
I told you.
I might need one next year. If the project that we do after this one is a go project, I may be looking for an apprentice. You guys can find it out.
I can take our days.
I would first of all have to see if they draw in a style that's complementary to my own style, and they'd have to be very hard workers. That's a real problem with creative people, especially artists. There's a tendency to be very lazy, and a tendency to want everything in their career to happen now instead of having the patience. And like they tend to look at their artwork as being better than it is, you know? And I've always been very honest with myself. When I knew my work was crap. I still think my work is crap. So I'm looking for somebody with that kind of humility that says, my work sucks, but if you'll hire me, whatever, you know? I work hard, you know? So I definitely need somebody who's hard. I need somebody who's versatile. I need somebody who understands Photoshop. I need somebody who can understand the concept of drawing and inking and things like that. Basically, I'm looking for Sonny Strait to be my apprentice. So that'd be kind of cool. I've never really had an apprentice, not a working relationship apprentice yet. I've had a lot of students. I've taught over 300 students in acting classes in Denton. And many of them have gone on to do work in the field, which I'm very proud of. 2 of them last year were nominated for Best New Voice Actors. So yeah, I guess that's basically what I look for in an apprentice. I really just need somebody who's a hard worker and who's good, you know. They don't have to be professional level, but they have to be improving towards that. You know, that has to be. You have to see that that's their goal. You have to look at their portfolio and go, oh, you're much better from this page to this page to this page. You know, that's definitely what I would look for.
But they also have to not think that they're good.
They have to know that they are improving, you know, and they want to keep improving. Any other questions? We're gonna go to the bar now? 10:40. We have 20 minutes left in this panel. Yes.
Sorry, getting pinned. So.
No, but if you ask one more question, you get to be a moderator. You can sit up here with me. Cool.
So, in regards to both voice acting and comics, how do you get attached, or do you get attached to your characters? And in what ways does that affect how they're either voiced and or animated and directed?
Yeah, I get attached to like almost all of them, you know, especially if I have more than just one day. If I just do a character for 3 lines, I don't get to know this character, I don't care about him. But any character I've been cast in, it tends to become your favorite character because that's the one you're doing now. But there's a character in ElfQuest that I never really liked. His name was Tyr, T-E-I-R. And Tyr was well named because he's very gothic and very whiny and crybaby kind of character. And I never liked him, right? And so when Wendy asked me if I would draw 2 pages for ElfQuest, or well, she just asked me if I want to draw ElfQuest, I said, I'll do a couple of pages. I picked him and his wife, Ember, to be the stars of those 2 pages. Because I thought, if I'm going to draw ElfQuest, I have to love all the characters. And this is a character I don't love, so I must figure it out why and how to understand him. And so once I set out a story, I had a story where she's a badass with a sword. So she's teaching him how to use a sword, right? And at one point, he charges at her. She twists around and swats him on the butt with his back and flat end of the sword. He goes flying into a bush. I was like, now I like him.
He's taking his pie, I'm good.
Yeah, and she said, she's always basically, wow, I didn't know that you loved these 2 characters as much. I said, I don't. I hated him. That's why I did it, so I could get to like him. And she said, oh, I guess that makes sense. So yeah, you do need to like your characters. You need to relate to your characters, which also tends, I think, to make artisans, actors, and writers and cartoonists. They all tend to be very open-minded people, because they have to be open-minded to accept this personality that they're about to portray. Even like some skeevy people, in some ways you go, yeah, okay, there, but for the grace of God, you know, you can see it in yourself. Yeah.
How is it different doing the simul-dub type of schedule and also like how it was back in the day where you'll do more of a group? How's that different?
Yeah, everybody makes a big deal out of that, and it really is not that different. I mean, because in the past, it took us a week to do an episode. It was on average a week. The only difference is it has to be a week now. You have to get everything done within a week. Luckily though, our engineers, we have way more of them than we used to have to do mixing and stuff. And also they're way faster than they used to be. So, and now they're doing 20 new shows every 3 months. So they've gotten really good. And we've also, in our production, we've also gotten faster as well. So it's not that difficult. It's very easy, except when someone gets sick. And then what we do, we just get somebody to mimic them. And then when it comes time for the Blu-ray to come out or whatever, then we'll bring in the back to re-record those lines. But generally, it doesn't change that much. It can get a little hectic, you know, especially a show like One Piece that sometimes has like 100 characters on an episode. That's a lot of bit parts to record, and that takes a lot of time to do. But generally, it's not a problem.
How about when it comes to things like writing, the script, if you have that side of the schedule?
Well, you know what's changed at Funimation now? Now, we used to do contract labor. When I wrote for Funimation, I just wrote at home. Now we have offices at Funimation for the writers. So the writers, that's their job. That's their full-time job. And they're getting a salary for a full-time job instead of just paid per script. And that makes a big difference. When you're sitting down for 8 hours a day writing, you can write a lot more than if you're just writing one script while you're also trying to work these other jobs to pay the bills. So that has improved quite a bit. I think the scripts probably come out better now, and they're faster. Yeah.
How do you like the Dragon Ball Team 4 store and how they did their characters?
What's that?
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding. I think it's great. Team 4 Star is, and I think Team 4 Star, kept us going when nobody really cared about Dragon Ball Z. They kept the interest going, but also it's a great form of flattery, to be imitated like that. And so to me, it's just been fun. I mean, the Krillin own count was hilarious, and I love the way his own count went away recently with 18. Oh, hi, honey. Yeah, basically 18 makes out with him and you see his own count go away. Any other questions? Yes?
So I know like certain like Blu-ray cuts and things have like blooper reels, but everything's so low, like you guys are by yourselves in the booth. Do you guys wish sometimes that you were all together at one time? Like when you get blooper reels, it's like one-liners from one character. Like do you wish at some point you guys were all together and you could just like go off on like a 2-minute tangent, just have like a giant blooper reel?
I would love to be able to record that way. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a little side project with the very limited animation thing that I will have the people all in the booth together to record. But with anime, it's just impossible to do that because we're trying to match mouth flaps. And so you can't have a group of people do that together. I mean, I guess you could, but it would be very sloppy. And we kind of pride ourselves on being very tight, with our anime. And the Japanese aren't. They don't care, if it matches or not. They're the ones originating it. But for some reason, we set a standard years ago. I think Chris Sabat, I remember him pulling in all the directors. And this is still in our early days, but he said, I think there was like 3 directors at that time. But he said, I want our goal to look like prelay. And you guys know what prelay is? I didn't know what prelay was then. Nobody did. Chris did, because he had researched this. And he said, well, prelay is when the actors are recorded first, and then their animators go and animate to their voices. And what we do is dubbing. There's an actual message from a telemarketer, like I need that. They really stayed there through my entire message to leave a message. So he said, what I want our goal to be is to look like it's prelay. Like some people wouldn't even know that it was recorded somewhere else first. And so that was always been our goal. And I think we've come really close to that. I mean, at some shows especially, it's like, I don't know, maybe especially like Assassination Classroom, I played Koro Sensei. He didn't have any mouth flaps, so, bang on.
Which one?
Yeah.
How much has the industry changed since when you first started? You
Well,
mentioned better engineers, better equipment. What do you think really changed for him?
The main thing that changed is that it is an industry now. It wasn't an industry back then. It was just a couple of studios who did dubbing, and put it out there. I think Yu-Gi-Oh was out there when we came out. Yu-Gi-Oh was the enemy at our time, until Funimation got into distribution, and they started distributing other people's stuff as well as our own. I think that was one of the reasons why we survived as long as we did, and we started distributing Yu-Gi-Oh, so it was just like, yeah, guys, we hope you do great, because when you do great, we do great. So it was a really smart move. Gen made a lot of really smart moves with Funimation. I don't know if this is true. I heard there's a rumor that's going around, and I've never had the guts to ask him. But Navar was a company that bought us out, and I think he bought out for $10 million. They bought Funimation. And so we were employees of Navar for a while. And then Navar was going bankrupt. And so they were going to just liquidate Funimation. And when they said they made an announcement they're going to liquidate Funimation, Gen called them up and said, no, you're not, because I have been buying shares, and I now own 51% of your stock. And so you're not selling this to anyone. And they went, well, what do we do? He says, I'll tell you what, I'll buy it back from you. And he bought it back for like half of what they paid him for it. So he basically got $5 million for nothing. Well, actually it wasn't for nothing. Navar put us in this huge building that we're in now. It's like the size of a football stadium. Whereas before we were in like a corner of a bank building. Our entire office space you could fit in this room and still have rooms left over. So it's amazing if that's what happened. I have pretty good authority that's what happened. So that's a pretty good accomplishment to keep us afloat.
Smart man.
Very smart man. Yeah. Well, he was a technical guy, you know. He was an IT guy. So he has an IT guy who had an eye for art. I mean, he published a comic book series before. It wasn't his drawing. It was just some people he liked, and so he was kind of into the business. And Akira Toriyama, when he puts this stuff out in the world, in other markets, he likes it to be relatives who do it, and he's a distant cousin of Akira Toriyama. And so they said, yeah, well, there's a guy in Texas who is a relative of yours, and he actually has published a comic book series, and so that's why he gave it to him. Oh, Lucia, isn't she cute even when she cries? Any other questions? No? All right, let's get out of here.
Crowd's getting rough, right?
Yeah, let's follow her. We got 10 more minutes. If you guys have any more questions, if you don't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to point to each of you and you have to ask a question. It doesn't have to be about anything comic or anime related, but you have to ask a question. Not you. That's my wife. Huh?
It's a good one, too.
What?
Well, you said a telemarketer called and left a message, whatever. Why is there a such thing as telemarketing when everyone in the world prides themselves on never answering their phone?
Because it's not everyone in the world. They're trying to target old people.
People who always
People who go,
Who's this? Hello? No, I didn't know that the IRS was going to arrest me. Really?
And then they give their social security number.
yeah.
My social security number. Let me look it up. Hang on, young man. 813-623.
I'm just reading this phone number on here. I'm not It's the hotel's phone number. That's why. Because there's still suckers out there.
Yeah.
Born every minute.
Yeah, one every minute. That'll never change. Any other question? What's your question? You have to ask a question. That's the rule.
Will you sign my Stronghold cover?
Yeah, bring it over here. Do you have a marker?
No, no.
Oh, then no. Any other questions? What's your yes?
Favorite Hellboy villain?
Ooh, I liked Rasputin. I thought that was a cool. What a cool concept to have as a villain. You know.
The pancakes.
Yeah, I love that pancakes one. I don't like pancakes. Yeah, he was like the first one too, right? But there was been some pretty cool villains throughout. But I thought that was a cool idea to use an actual historical figure as a villain in your comic book, other than Hitler, which has been a villain in everybody's fiction. Yes.
Since we're asking any question, is Marvel movies not cinema?
F. Scorsese, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Some of the best cinema we've ever had, some of the best stories we've ever seen were done. So what if it's superheroes? It's still really good, because you can tell the difference. Like DC movies, they're not as good.
No,
you know?
they're not.
I mean, I'll watch them because I'm a dork, but they're not as good as the Marvel movies. The Marvel movies are really good. They're high art.
Have you seen Joker?
I have not seen that yet, though. I want to see it. Is it any good? Yeah? Okay, I hear it is good. So, and I liked Wonder Woman. I thought that was a good movie. I wouldn't put it like Academy Award level, but I would put some of the Marvel movies in Academy Award, and they didn't get any, but I think that they should have.
Yeah.
And Robert Downey's portrayal of Iron Man, that was
He
genius.
deserves Best Actor for that. The whole.
Yes,
Iron
for the whole
Man.
run of every Marvel movie he was in.
Yeah, exactly.
But especially the first movie, it was just like, what a way to take comic book movies, to just approach it from a legitimate, talented, brilliant actor playing this very seriously, and it came across so well, you
And it
know.
was such a gamble too because of his
Yeah.
history and everything. I like.
But that's Tony Stark is that kind of character. He's broken, you know. He's a broken guy who's not going to let it stop him, you know. So it was perfect. It was perfect casting and it was perfect performance. Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think about the Netflix on the Stranger Things?
Stranger Things?
Yeah.
I really have not seen much of Stranger Things.
What?
Everybody in my family seen it.
It's
My
good.
wife, my grandson,
It's
they all
good.
say, you need to watch it.
Trust
I haven't
me.
gotten around to watching it
Season
yet.
4 is the
Season
best.
4 is awesome. I will check it out eventually, but I just haven't got into it. I have a lot of
I heard
material
about
to
that.
watch. Yeah.
Oh my god, my brain just farted as soon as you pointed at me. What is your favorite genre of comic book outside of superheroes?
I usually, superheroes are not my favorite genre. I tend to like things that are a bit more underground, you know, like I love like Robert Crumb, a lot of the 60s artists. I love a lot of books that came from Fantagraphics back in the 80s boom. There was some really cool independent comics. There's a book called Hate. It's by a guy named Peter Bagg, and it's about this guy who's in his 20s, you know, he's just living his life. His name is Buddy Bradley, and he gets a job at a bookstore, he has a girlfriend, he has a roommate, and it's just drama of life, and it's really good, and it's so cartoony in the style. The style of drawing is just like way out there, and yet it's just very natural slice of life storytelling inside. So I like that, but I really just like, I like things that are not expected, you know? In comic books, with superheroes especially, you pretty much know where you're getting into, and sometimes you're surprised, but generally you're not that surprised. So I like things, like we were talking about Lenore. Have you read that comic? It's about a twisted little...
It's the cutest little dead girl.
Dead girl, yeah. It's an awesome series.
You
Yeah.
mentioned Jack Kirby before.
Yeah.
They recently released a collection of his works, and they actually showed some of his original artwork, which I was shocked with because it was highly detailed.
Yeah.
When you look at the original comics, they're not detailed, but they're very rarely detailed because of the printing process.
Yeah, you lose a lot in printing. You also, I think the inkers sometimes streamline things a little too much, and you don't really get to see all the detail he put in. He's amazing though. The way, and actually Wendy, the person that I'm apprenticed to, she apprenticed to Jack Kirby.
Oh, wow.
So in a way I'm related. So it's like, he's my grandfather. But what he would do was amazing. You guys see that guy Guy who draws straight marker to page? He usually do like these. What?
Oh God, John G.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He would have this, he would have this poster that's about mural size, and he would just start drawing. You know, he's no plan. There's no pencils underneath. He just starts drawing, and everything is drawn perfectly, right? And Jack Kirby would do that. He would start like in one corner here, and then just draw down here for a little bit, then over here for a little bit, then here and here and here, and then draw in panels once he was done. It was just like he was just seeing it on the page and just deciding what part he wants to trace from this other dimension, you know? It's amazing. He was the father of modern comics for a really good reason.
Well, the reason I mentioned him was you mentioned like hardworking, because I remember looking at Jack Kirby's schedule and going, this is insane, because he had so many publications coming out at the same time, and he was usually writing and drawing at the same time.
Sometimes he did 4 issues, four books a month. It's unheard of, unheard of. But I think in his case, and a lot of cartoonists' cases, it's more than hard work. It's kind of an obsession. Like you've got to have that graphomania we were talking about. You could be drawing all the time. And honestly, that's where I would love to be. You know, where I'm just drawing all the time, 24/7. My wife, I keep her up all the time. But we have a, huh? She's cool. But like I have a studio outside the house, but I also have a little place in our bedroom that I'll draw at home. And so even when I'm not working in the studio, I like to be at home just sketching and stuff like that. And of course, Jack Kirby did that. He did that his whole life. He was so prolific that when he went to war, he went to World War II. He was a scout in World War II. Before he left, he did a year's worth of the series he was working on, like in a couple of months. He just drew them all out so that he could still be published while he was serving in the military. Pretty amazing. And while he was there, he also drew there. Yeah. And as a scout, his job was to go into enemy territory. It's like the most dangerous job you could have. And he would draw a map of things he sees and bring it back so that the soldiers would know what's up. And there is a story going around that he said something, he and his troopers were about to go into some battle that was a suicide mission, and then somebody said, you can't let him die, he's Jack Kirby. He created Captain America, and he goes, what? He goes, yeah, he's the creator of Captain America, and he goes, you're the creator of Captain America? He goes, yeah, that's my job stateside, I draw comics, and he goes, no, you have to stay here. So he stayed here and everyone died but him.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I just heard that in the comic book rumors. This is before the internet, you know, so a lot of times you couldn't verify these things, but it sounds right. Yeah. I do know that when he worked for the Eisner Studio, if you're a cartoonist, one of the biggest awards you can get is an Eisner Award. This guy named Will Eisner, he created a comic called The Spirit. And The Spirit was the only comic book that was ever in newspapers. It was like people opened their comic, they had their comic section, and they had a comic book, and it was The Spirit. It was like the most popular thing from 1940 to 1950. It was hugely famous, and then completely forgotten, as comics usually are. But he worked for Eisner. And one time these mafia guys came in, trying to shake the place down. And he said, according to Will Eisner, he was like, very nervous, and he's like, well, I mean, maybe we can work something out. And then Jack Kirby stood up, and Jack Kirby was about 5 feet tall, stood up to his full 5 feet, and walked up and goes, we don't need any of your mafia crap in here, get out! And they went, what? Get out before I get angry! And then they left. And so Will Eisner's going, they're gonna kill us, they're gonna kill us all. But they never came back. Power of Jack Kirby.
Wow.
He truly had the power cosmic. Well, it's 5 o'clock now. I appreciate you guys being anime fans and coming to a comic book panel. That's very nice. I do have another panel tomorrow, right? Where's it? And I'm doing a signing today at 6. Tomorrow I have a Full Metal Alchemist panel through the eyes of Mace Hughes in panel room 3.
That's this room.
And then Meredith and I, we have a panel together on Sunday at noon called What Do We Do? I don't know. What do we do? I don't know.
We could discover it in an hour.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.